Well, I think if the question is, what is the next step in getting to the truth of the matter on these issues, I think there's hardly anybody in this room who doesn't know what my answer is. The next step, assuming another nation, major nation, doesn't take independent action, is to maneuver the U.S. government, which in this case really means the executive branch, the President and the Pentagon, into a position where they have to acknowledge and announce the extraterrestrial presence, which is disclosure, the disclosure event. That's all it is. It's not, you know, dumping 4,000 boxes of files or revealing how many condos and Corvettes the Nazis got when they came under paperclip. It just means that there's an ET presence. Now, you know, give us a few moments or a few days to think about what we want to say next. That's all it is. And it's a very simple thing. And because it's a simple thing, with the right moves on the chessboard, you can actually make it happen. And I happen to believe that it's ready to happen, and it can happen this year. And I talk a lot about that a lot. Meaning that the necessary moves to get the President of the United States to cut a deal with the Pentagon so that both sides are relatively happy with how it's going to be done will come in front of the American people and announce ET presence. Now guess what? After that, all hell breaks loose, and a lot of stuff starts getting resolved very quickly. Now, before I comment further, I do want to make two quick mentions here. First of all, I have to say that based upon certainly what we've heard today and what I'm pretty sure we're going to hear tomorrow, I happen to think this is the most sophisticated conference presentation on this subject matter I have ever attended. And that includes my conferences. This is high level stuff. This is the kind of conference where you get to use all that education you went and got, because you really need it to cover this material. The second thing I want to say is that it's difficult to keep up with everything that's going on, and the people and the research in this field. It's vast. So I'm not up on everything. So I confess today that I have come late to the Joseph Farrell fan club, but boy, am I on board, because this work is extraordinary work. And let me tell you why. You know, the problem with activism, which is essentially trying to get the government to change its policy, and most of you, like me, have lived through some of the most significant activist movements of the 20th century, both in the United States and abroad. So you know what it's like. Is that you can't go to the media, you can't go to the people, you can't go to the politicians with a 67-year historical model of an event that will have 50,000 books written about it and say, you know, have you got 4 days? I want to give you the picture here. You have to create some basic fundamentals, get people involved, and then get a result. What are the fundamentals? There's an extraterrestrial presence. The United States government has withheld that acknowledgement. The United States government has ET technology, which has been absorbed into a massive secret world and research with huge amounts of money. And that secret world now contains a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't know about, from biowarfare work to everything else. The whole thing's floating away and getting away from us. And if we don't deal with it pretty soon and bring everything down, that's pretty much it. And we want the United States president to announce ET presence. That's pretty much it. But what happens there is that a lot of people think, okay, that's it. Oh no, that's not it. Let's be clear. The truth embargo, which I casually refer to, was a massive program on which billions upon billions of dollars were spent, not only to keep the research secret, to keep the finances secret, and to keep the media under control, and the philanthropists out of the picture, and the universities pretty much out of the picture. A major 67-year effort that is unparalleled in history. And then the actual history of the phenomena and the ET presence, and of course all the scientific research, is vast. So we're sitting on this huge historical reality, which is not available in schools to learn about, and isn't going to be until the disclosure event takes place. So it's really kind of an odd situation. It's like there's this giant hole in the last 67 years of reality, and we're supposed to sort of not know about that, and then just sort of marvel at the things that are happening. We don't know why. Why did we suddenly end the moon program? Why is the shuttle program suddenly not there? And 100 other things. Oh, well, it's just the way it is. Oh, no, no. It's part of a large picture. Most of the picture just isn't available at your movie theater right now. And the last thing I'd like to say before I pass the mic is this. There was one critical moment in Joseph's presentation. Well, there were many critical moments, but there was one in particular that I noted. It came toward the end. And essentially the particular meme that he presented was that one of the very possible reasons why the secrecy has been so profoundly maintained is that the power of the energy systems and technology that's being worked on, as well as the anti-gravitic technology, if it gets in the wrong hands, could be a serious problem. I'd like to mention something to you may have forgotten about. Back in 1991, 92, actually slightly before 91, there were articles which I read, because I was in Washington at the time, that the military was kind of had a problem in that they had been developing a huge range of very sophisticated weapons and were very frustrated that there wasn't a war that they could use them in. There just hadn't been one for a while. And interestingly enough, about the same time I was reading this article, April Glaspie, whatever his name is, one of the ambassadors, one of the diplomats working with Bush, Glaspie, turns up in Saddam Hussein's office and gives him a little wink nod about, you want to go in Kuwait? It's like, we don't care. And the next thing, he goes into Kuwait, and the next thing you know, we're at war. But nothing like I'd ever seen before. We were at war, and so we're getting the feedback from the war, and of course we're killing lots of people, but that was really wasn't the key thing. What was, we were getting day after day after day of some generals, usually Schwarzkopf or some colonels, saying, here's today's footage. Here is this gun, the nose camera footage from a guided missile launched by a stealth plane 400 miles away. Here it comes in. Here's the bridge it's going to blow up. Oh, there's a bicycle going across. Boom, blows up the bridge, or the house, or the car. And they're just having a hell of a time showing off the incredibly sophisticated weapons, stealth, camera technology, guided, all this stuff. In other words, they had a chance to really use those weapons, and it was on some Iraqis who had stepped over the line, and you gotta break a few eggs. And it finally got so bad that they stopped it because they were getting a lot of negative feedback from Americans. Are going, you're just showing off just a touch too much here. Right? I mean, these are dead people at the end of these weapons. So the point I want to make is this. Joseph Farrell made a key point that maybe the secrecy is because these weapons, if they get in the wrong hands, could be dangerous. I would like to make the suggestion that they are already in the wrong hands.
Reports look good from here in the blockhouse at this time. All aspects of the mission go, T-minus 30 seconds and counting. We'll get ignition of those 8 engines in the first stage at the 3-second mark in the countdown. Now T-minus 21 seconds and counting. We have completed our...
Let's be clear. The scientific method, in my view, is the greatest intellectual accomplishment of the human race since it emerged from its arboreal beginnings. It's an incredible thing, and the people that pursue science are doing extraordinary things. When you build a rocket to go to the moon, it can't be built on hunches, guesses, prayers, or anything other than the hardest of science. Or it won't work. It won't even get 1 millimeter off the ground. And this is true about a lot of things we do. Okay, so what's the situation on science on this issue? Well, first of all, about 20 years ago, this is 20 years ago, a poll was done of just scientists on their view with respect to the phenomena. It's similar to many of the polls that have been done with the general public. 50% of the American people consistently poll this phenomenon as extraterrestrial. Okay. Well, a poll was done of just scientists, and guess what? 50% of the scientists polled said this is extraterrestrial. Okay. That's interesting. All scientists, they weren't just doing astronomers, all scientists, biologists, archaeologists, whatever. 50%. Okay, great. It gets more interesting. The best statistics that I have seen on the conservative side, and this is something I'm going to be talking about soon, and I'm about to publish something of interest. 2% of the American people are contactees, physical contactees. It's a big number, it's about 7 million, which means that 2% of the scientists are contactees. You just alluded to that. Okay, so we got 2% of the scientists are contactees, that's a big number, and you've got 50% believe it's extraterrestrial, so we must have a significant scientific engagement of the issue. Peer-reviewed papers, institutions, all of that. No, we don't have any of that. We have the odd scientist that has stepped out, right? We know some of them. John Mack was a scientist, psychiatrist. He stepped out. Harvard tried to sack him. Cost him $250,000. And a few others like that. But that's it. And all the scientists working at the universities who are teaching and doing a little research, how many fully accredited programs on the phenomenon exist in the 5,000 colleges and universities? 0. Okay. And so where's the research being done on the energy? Well, the research on the energy issue is primarily being done by non-college trained garage inventors, okay, who are very smart, with the odd, BS in physics, sprinkled in there, and they're cruising along, and again, the physics is there, right? And one of the reasons it's there is that people have been seeing these things flying around for the last 60 years, and it's just like you see the birds fly, you come up with an aerodynamic wing. You see an anti-gravity craft coming, you start looking for the reasons for that. That's what humans do. They're very good at it. And so you got all these inventors, and they all keep coming up with little things. Well, guess what happens there? This is the citizen science situation. They file for a patent. The patent gets eminent domain. They file for a patent. It's not accepted, right? Their lab gets closed down. They get closed down, right? All kinds of suppressions, all over the board, some of which get to the level of what they call executive action. So being an inventor in this, not easy. So you have a massive scientific suppression that covers the entire scientific community, college level. You've got, citizen scientists being, wow, in the name of what? Right? In the name of maintaining the truth embargo. And so when you corrupt science at that level, guess what? It spreads. If you're a scientist with noble intentions, worked like hell to get that PhD, went through the whole rigmarole. I could have gotten one, but I would have had a nervous breakdown. And so, and you get appraised of this, this is going on, and most of them do. Basically, you're compromised. You're in, right? You've just signed up. And so that's going on, and so now you are vulnerable to every other manner of corruption that the government wants to do. Now, this happened in the Soviet Union, it happened in Nazi Germany, but it's not supposed to happen here, but it is. And so in the climate area, you've got corruption, you've got violations of all kinds of principles, you've got a breakdown in the system. And so essentially, we have lost a significant percentage of scientific advances since 1947 because a blanket was put over the whole shebang and said, look, you can do your science, but it's underneath the blanket. And that's a tragedy. And just one of the costs of the truth embargo.
All reports look good from here in the blockhouse at this time. All aspects of the mission go, T-minus 30 seconds and counting. We'll get ignition of those 8 engines in the first stage at the 3-second mark in the countdown. Now T-minus 21 seconds and counting. We have completed our...
Same has to occur within this field to a certain degree, right? I mean, there might even be people who have already achieved some of this, and they have the knowledge, and they've gone before us, right? But can this be opened up and made available to more people?
Well, that's a wonderful analogy. ARPANET they voluntarily let it out to the public. Now, there's a lot of politicians, old fogey politicians, that regret that now, because most of the politicians were of an age and a generation, they had no idea what the internet was, didn't know how to use an email, and that thing just got out the door. The government let it out the door, and now it has come back around to basically bite them in the ass, big time. The internet is the #1 threat to centralized, controlled, corrupt government. And, you know, it will help bring all this down. But the situation with ET technology, or whether it's ET derived or human derived, is unique, because essentially the situation is this. The government has created an embargo on the ET reality. Let's forget about the tech, just the ET reality. That cannot be acknowledged. Anything that threatens that embargo, theoretically up until today, must not be allowed. And so, yeah, like they let the internet out, they could let anti-gravity out. They just come to us one day, the president go in front of us and say, guess what? My the National Science Foundation has just informed me that we have gravitic craft. And we've been working on it, and they're going to become available. We're going to bring that technology out. Just think of the wonderful things. They're not going to do that, because the next day, they're going to get 5 million questions on the internet. Where did you get anti-gravitic technology? We want the complete provenance. We want to know the scientists that worked on it. They want their papers, their notes, how they figured it out. We want the whole history of it. And the government knows they can't give you that history because the history has an ET connection, and therefore it'll be denied you.
Well, they're good about making up stories, right? So they could make something up.
But the American people are getting better at putting holes in their stories, right? It's getting harder to lie. This is a major problem for American politics. The internet is making it harder to lie. Not surprisingly, the government's response to this dilemma was to attend courses on how to lie better. Right? We're going to outwit the internet. And so what you have is you have all of these things being held hostage to a fundamental issue. We are not prepared to announce the ET presence. It's not we're not prepared to announce a great technology breakthrough. No, we can't announce it because we're not prepared to announce the ET presence. And so when people like, certainly Richard Dolan, one of the most important people in this field, period, write what they write, what you start to learn is the cost of all this, right? The cost of all this. Let's respond to something that was just said. This economic transition, if we bring out zero-point energy, which may be partially derived from ET technology of some sort, well, a lot of jobs are going to be lost because we may be closing gas stations in 10 years or whatever. I will stand that completely on its head. If you could, in a reasonable length of time, say within 2 years after disclosure, start installing major energy generators working off of 0 point, producing electricity initially on a high level, factories, cities, and everything else, at 1 cent on the dollar, meaning your electrons are coming for 1 cent instead of $1, the impact on the economy would be astronomical, because you would have lowered the cost of business in a huge range of areas. Most importantly, you would lower the cost of development projects in business. Whereas you've got 1,000 business plans that won't work, drop the energy price by 95%, they all work. Suddenly, millions of people are being put back to work doing things they can now afford to do. Disclosure is not an impact, negative impact in the economy, it is the answer to our economic development. And so by withholding this technology under the truth embargo, they are putting millions of people out of work. They are creating economic crises that are taking your home, your pension, your job, and it's all in the interests of national security. And if the Harvard University or MIT wants to send out some of their fine professors to debate the impact of disclosure to the American people with me, I would be happy to do it. And maybe they can make the case, oh, no, 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 no. Super cost, low technology, terrible thing. Oh, energy gets that cheap, oh, terrible things will happen. People will drive too much, they'll use up too much, whatever the hell. Let them do it, but they won't do it. And you have never seen it because they can't do it. They cannot win that argument. They can't even begin to win that argument, and so they say nothing. Nothing at all. And we raise these issues on the net, in conferences. I've raised it on CNN, Fox. We've got books out there. They have nothing to say about it because they cannot talk about it. Because if they do, it will hurt their career. You want to know how the America got from being the greatest nation on earth with the most powerful economy and everything else in 1950 to a nation that's on its way out the door with collapsing infrastructure, mass corruption, and $17 trillion in debt, and $200 million in unfunded liabilities? You look at those kinds of actions. You look at that history, and that's exactly the result you're going to get when you follow those policies.
All reports look good from here in the blockhouse at this time. All aspects of the mission go, T-minus 30 seconds and counting. We'll get ignition of those 8 engines in the first stage at the 3-second mark in the countdown. Now T-minus 21 seconds.